It is my pleasure to have you join us on this program from the National Assembly. In this edition, we have a lineup of activities for you, and we are starting with the highlights of the visit by the European Union Election Observation Mission to Nigeria, who presented the mission's report to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, who in turn pledged that the 9th National Assembly will adequately consider the recommendations of the report in line with the political culture of the nation. Welcome to the program. I am Kenneth Nani. The Speaker of House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, has received the 2019 General Elections report by the European Union Election Observation Mission to Nigeria, with the hope that the 9th National Assembly will consider the implementations therein in line with the political culture peculiar to the nation. The EU delegation is being led by Ambassador Katie Kasem.
The current mission that is coming to an end now is the 6th, of course, present here. And in between having those, even though that they are almost part of our team, as a matter of fact, because they have been here for so long, coming in the beginning of January and only concluding now with just a few weeks in between where they have not been present in the country. In spite of that, the ongoing work to consolidate democracy really takes place between elections, of course. And the European Union has provided more than 100 million euros since 1999 in support for democratic governance, and that includes support for the National Assembly itself. It includes support for political parties, for INEC, of course, and for a number of other institutions, and of course also civil society and the work that they do in the country. And if there's any secret to the success of that kind of engagement, it is really fundamentally leaning on the able leadership of Nigerians themselves, because it's of course only for Nigerians to lead Nigeria by the end of the day. So leaning on your policies and your engagement. And I think that's exactly the spirit with which we present also the findings of the observation mission this time around, looking also at encouraging that national dialogue. It has been mentioned by the President himself around election time. It has been reiterated, of course, by the INEC chairman and so many others, that importance of seeking a national dialogue and consensus around key points here to see as early progress as possible in terms of electoral reform. I think we all witnessed last time around that doing things and agreeing on reform processes too late risk jeopardizing by the end of the day seeing a final agreement and seeing implementation also on some of those reform processes. So, Your Excellencies, I thank you very much for this opportunity. We look very much forward to collaborating with the House. Already there's an inter-parliamentary program in place between the European Parliament and your Parliament. We wish to only strengthen that. And of course, we work closely with many of your committees on seeing, opportunities of supporting progress on a different part of legislation. So with that and with your blessing, Excellency, I will immediately pass over to Hannah Roberts for a more detailed presentation of the findings of the Election Observation Mission. Thank you very much.
The report contains 30 recommendations with 7 specific areas requiring priority attention. These include reforms in the political system, improvement of election result collation processes, more transparency in the operations of INEC, and the processes that will encourage more women participation in politics.
We came in early January and we're here till early April with a core team of experts and also 40 long-term observers deployed around the country. This meant that we were able to see something of the ground reality and to be able to see the ways in which the election process was working smoothly and well, the improvements that were happening, but also, of course, it meant we saw some of the shortcomings and the problems that were arising during the process. We've returned this week to release our final conclusions on the electoral process with our Chief Observer, Maria Arena, a member of the European Parliament, releasing the report on Saturday. We're very pleased to have the chance to bring it to yourselves, as critically in this report, there are 30 recommendations for reform in the future. We've really focused on the areas where we think there can be positive change to avoid some of the shortcomings that we're seeing in this election and make future election processes smoother in Nigeria. These 30 have been individually assessed, and we've identified which ones involve legal change, and the majority involve some sort of legal reform. We therefore really look to yourselves and your senator colleagues in terms of taking the next steps to be avoiding some of the problems that came up. As the ambassador mentioned, what we've seen around the world is that leaving electoral legal reform until a few months before the election is problematic. It doesn't leave time for implementation and things are heated. Therefore, we very much encourage early steps in looking not just at these recommendations, but looking at electoral reform more widely. That's to allow time for national dialogue, an inclusive process of discussing the ways forward with a variety of stakeholders, agreeing on legislative changes, and then, of course, time to actually put them into practice well before the next election, so that the rules of the game are clear for the colleagues in the future who'll be running in elections and taking part in some way. Of the 30 recommendations that we've made, a number were made last time as well, so we hope that this time more steps would be taken to change the process. As 30 is quite a substantial number to go through, we've identified 7 priority recommendations, and if I may take a moment, I'll just briefly go over these. Most of the largest part relate to the work of INEC, as obviously they're critical in the election process. And we suggest that there be stronger regulation of the process for the compilation of results, so that there are stronger procedures in place, so it's clear exactly what should happen when, so that there's a more robust way of checking the results through the system for the tabulation and the totals being announced. Secondly, we recommend that there be stronger transparency measures in the results process, so everybody can see the results at each stage of the process and see how the announced totals have been reached. And of course, we have to mention the need for operational and organisational reform to avoid the problem that we saw with the postponement of the election, but for INEC to work as a stronger institution, being more transparent and undertaking greater consultation with parties and other stakeholders. Our 4th recommendation relates to security, and in particular the interagency body responsible for security, where we suggest that it start earlier, that it be more transparent in its work, there be clear delineation of responsibilities between different agencies involved, and again that there be greater consultation with political parties and also with civil society. Our 5th recommendation relates to the involvement of women in the electoral process. I think we're all concerned to see that again in this election the number of women elected to the National Assembly has unfortunately reduced, and again Nigeria stays at the bottom of all the parliaments in Africa in terms of women's representation. I'm sure that's something that people would want to change, not to be in that position. We suggest that this would most strongly happen through legislative reform, requiring parties to have a minimum proportion of women candidates. Our 5th recommendation is that election tribunals be extended to cover the pre-election phase, so that the disputes arising from the primaries are resolved before election day, so voters know what they are voting for when they go to the polls. And finally, our last priority recommendation relates to the media, and in particular, improving the licensing system so there can be greater plurality amongst the media, particularly at state level. So adjusting the fee rates and also the system for approval by the National Broadcasting Commission, so that it's making its own decisions without presidential approval. We very much welcome any discussion on the issue, and would be on all of these issues, and would be very glad to hear from you about how you see possible ways forward with navigating the difficult terrain of addressing election reform. Thank you very much.
For us, we're going to hit the ground running in terms of electoral reforms, because you can, for me and for most of my colleagues, the process of elections is not just the election itself. The process is before the election, during the election, and after the election. That completes the process. So it's an ongoing thing, and it's something that we will do expeditiously. You cannot build something on nothing. Election and electioneering is a bedrock of any democracy, and it's important that we get it right, or as best as possible, and that's what we intend to do. You must understand that the fact that the Nigerian government speaks volumes. It means the Nigerian government is open to transparency. Without the invitation, you wouldn't be here. So we must note that it is in our own best interest as a fledgling democracy to take corrections as best as we can and put certain things and reforms in place that will make next year's or elections in 4 years or whenever it is more transparent, more open, more credible. Our partnership or collaboration with you when it comes to interparliamentary collaboration is also very important to us. We feed off of each other, and it's important that we continue to collaborate on the level of legislative work. We intend to introduce a lot of reforms in this 9th Assembly as well, and we will need collaboration from you. E-Parliament comes to mind readily, and we will be collaborating hopefully with you in reforming the House, our e-parliamentary system, and the rest of it. So once again, I want to, on behalf of the 9th Assembly, on behalf of my colleagues, thank you, commend you, and look forward to working with you even closer in future. You've reeled out these recommendations. We will tighten our electoral laws, but we will do it in consultation with you. We know what best suits us, and we also would want to know on the international best practices so that we can marry the two together, and at the end of the day we will birth at least in 4 years' time a more perfect electoral process. So I thank you once again for coming. Thank you very much.
The Speaker, House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, has also pledged to incorporate the House of Representatives press corps into the ongoing reforms in the House of Representatives. The Speaker was at the press corps center on a familiarization visit.
This gathering was requested for 2 reasons. 1, to familiarize ourselves with you, and secondly, to thank you for the honor you have done to the corps by graciously appointing our colleagues Lanre Lasisi, Wahab Dele Anofi, Musa Krishi as your media aide. Your Excellency, we have never had it so good, and we appreciate you, and we are glad that this actually happened during your time. We thank you very much. Your enviable contributions towards nation building paved the way for you. This clearly shows that you hold the corps in high esteem. Our colleagues who have been called to serve are experienced, dedicated, and committed journalists, and we have no doubt that they will make us proud and add value to your team. You have done well, and you made good choices. You have broken the record and set a precedent which we hope will be adhered to from now on. As the fourth estate of the realm, we have an obligation to report to the House objectively for national interest. And there is no doubt that the media is crucial to the sustenance of democracy in our country. Mr. Speaker, sir, we urge you to use your good office to ensure that legislations that will enhance media practice in Nigeria are passed in the 9th House of Representatives. Your Excellency, you will recall that there was a bill that was intended to enhance journalism practice in the country, and remunerations which you sponsored when you were the minority leader. I think that was in 2014. And unfortunately, that bill was dead on arrival. Just like journalists will put it, it was killed. And we're appealing to your good office that you will do something to that bill, to revisit that bill, to ensure that the welfare of journalists are actually taken into consideration. We believe this will go a long way for journalists. Am I speaking our minds? You have honored us with your presence, but we crave your indulgence to also present some requests. Secondly, we appeal for your support towards capacity building programs like retreats for reporters covering the House of Representatives. We believe this will go a long way in helping us report the House better. Our dear Deputy Speaker, Right Honorable Idris Wasi, had promised that the media center will be linked to the center so that we can view and report proceedings right from here. And we are hopeful that this will be completed before the House resumes from its recess in September 7. To crown it all, a conducive environment will go a long way to enhance our work. If you look at our furnitures over there, they're actually bad. And we are actually asking that you do something to this. Finally, you have always been a media-friendly legislator, and we're optimistic that you will always keep your doors open whenever we call upon you. You've been friendly to the House right from when you were the minority leader of the House, the majority leader of the House, now the Speaker of the 9th House of Representatives, and we believe in you. We believe in your commitment. We believe that you carry the media along. That's the more reason why we actually ask for an audience with you. And we also feel that it is long overdue. With this gesture, we believe that going forward, the 9th House in our reportage will report objectively and let the world know what people think about the National Assembly.
Well, let me thank you for all your support over the years. I've been here, for a long time. For a long time. Many of you I've come to know, I've come to become friends with. Many I know only from the distance. And hopefully this next 4 years we'll get to know each other even more because we're going to be working together. And working together means a lot of things. You can interpret that anyway, but it means that we're going to be developing Nigeria together. You're an intricate part of the business of lawmaking. Your reporting, that's why you're called the fourth realm. Your reporting is extremely crucial when it comes to nation building. So I'm going to charge you as we talk. I'm going to charge you, and we're going to have to be very, very honest with ourselves. Your reporting sometimes are not as accurate as they should be. I know every profession has its ethics. I'm only imploring that we try and stick to those ethical considerations as best as we can. Sometimes you see, and I believe sometimes it happens all over the world, you see screaming headlines, and you read the story, and has no relationship whatsoever with the headlines. Sometimes you talk about anonymous sources, stories that are negative, but have no semblance or relationship with the truth. Unfortunately, once you report, it's going to be difficult. Your reports are read by millions of people. And it's not every time that the National Assembly can be rebutting. It shows a disconnect between when we're supposed to be working together. Now, that is not to say that you should only be covering or reporting positive stories about the House. No. This is part of the checks and balances. If there's any negative, please, by all means, don't even waste time. Don't hesitate. Report it. But imbibe the culture of investigative journalism as opposed to speculative journalism that will serve nothing but to inflame sometimes the anger of the constituents. There are unintended consequences when we do that. Some of those unintended consequences can even lead to something very drastic back home. So there is a great deal of responsibility on our part and on your part for us to report accurately and report only the truth. At first, when I came in, I was going to ask for a reaccreditation. It was going to be part of the reforms. Let's accredit our press men and women again. But then we changed it. I thought about it and I said, no. Let the reform that is going to be in the House, that we're trying to put in the House, let us reform the press corps as well. Let us reform ourselves. So if we as legislators can ask for reform, then of course, you guys too should be able to reform yourselves. Because nobody's perfect. Whether as human beings or professionally, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. And so we need to talk truth to each other and try and see how we can make this institution work. I'm glad I was happy to employ people from amongst you. That wasn't done whimsically. It was done with a great deal of research and understanding of who they are, or what they've done, and what they'll be able to do. So I'm happy to work with them. As I'm working with you, it means I'm working with. As I'm working with them, it means I'm working with you by extension. So we have a lot of reforms. We expect you to be a part of it. We expect you to promote it. We expect you to see the good side of those reforms. We may end up hurting some people in the process, but I believe at the end of the day, it's going to be for the greater good. You've brought a laundry list of things that you want. I'm glad. You can't want furniture, want this, want a new press, which we are all entitled to, and we're going to try very hard to make sure you get those things. But at the same time, I'm glad you want those things. I'm glad you see the state of your furniture. I can only ask you to go to the offices of members and even the Speaker's office to see the state of the furniture there. Now, if you are reporting adequately that the National Assembly of the House of Representatives does not have enough capital, then we'll be able to make a case for these things that you're asking for. But when you're reporting, exaggerating the figures, then it becomes difficult. If there is we can't ask for more money, it becomes difficult for us to meet your needs. So it's a double-edged sword, however you want to do it. But we will look into your working environment. It has to be conducive. You have to be comfortable. The issue of the plenary and the proceedings in the plenary being relayed here is being looked into already. And I can assure you that that will be addressed. I'm not giving you a timeline because I like to be held to my word. And if I say, oh, by September, I want to make sure that by September you get it. So I'm not going to, but it's going to be pretty soon, maybe sooner than later. So that's it for me. I want to thank you once again for all your support. I know there were those who, because we do our research, there were those who were supporting other candidates. Yeah. But that is fine. That is what democracy is all about. But now that elections are over, I hope I can get your support, those of you that were on the other side.
Next on the program is courtesy visit to the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Idris Wase, by delegates from the Plateau State House of Assembly and the Plateau State Youth Council.
As members from Plateau State House of Assembly, knowing fully that we have our own here as one of the stakeholders in the country and in Abuja, coming here to Abuja will be a very, very easy thing for us. We'll come here with our shoulders high, knowing that you will be there for us. You have been there for the state as a member. We have benefited a lot from you. As our senior brother, sir, we will always come here to seek your advice, to always work with you as one of the stakeholders from the state, to seek for your contributions and other things that will bring development to our dear states. Like my senior brother rightly said, we are lucky from it was East. All of us have our representative here in the National Assembly. Now that we have the door open, we'll always be here, sir.
I welcome you to our office. I welcome you to our complex. And I thank you for the visit. I want to say this is Plateau City, and the entire Plateau is here. There is no another reception that could be done for appreciation more than this gathering. And so I thank you very much. for the wisdom that God has given you to do that. Of course, you are one of our own. Yeah, we just brought you to Delta. He was born, bred, and grown. He's a Plateau product complete. That is the beauty of Plateau. The entire country is in Plateau State. There is no tribe, there is no representative on the Plateau, so we are grateful to God. My pledge, first I want to tell you that my doors are very wide open, not only to you, to the entire country. We need one another. Yes. We need to come together closely to be able to tackle the menace that's bedeviling the entire country, be it insecurity, on the issue of poverty, which is everywhere. It doesn't have face, it doesn't have tribe, it doesn't have religion. So this very for this particular make you proud.
The Speaker of the Ninth Assembly, John,
Number 6, Parliamentary Accountability Committee members must themselves be prepared to go with clean hands for oversight and demand for accountability on public financial management by ministries, departments, and agencies. And the reason for this, in conclusion, is that you cannot claim to be a parliamentarian trying to probe financial accountability of an arm of government when your hands are deeply soiled in corrupt practices and abuse of power or office.
The workshop seeks to engage its target audience on the following issues. Number 1,
Writing studies
for critical
opposition